Viewers, again, welcome again as we are going to continue with another episode concerning our topic, the American War of Independence or American Revolution. In this episode, we will be looking at the reasons why the British were finally defeated in this war. Because we said last time that the war started in 1775 in the Battle of Lexington and ended in the Battle of Yorktown in 1783. Now, what was the reason why the 13 colonies put their energy and at the end of the day, they finally defeated the British? We are going to be examining these reasons. Our first reason, we talk about the ability of George Washington. Who was George Washington? George Washington was the commander of the American soldiers. George Washington, though he was not a military genius, but because of the patriotism that was in George Washington, the love to liberate the 13 colonies from the British suppression, George Washington developed unflagging perseverance. He has to persevere. George Washington became a military genius in the course of the war. George Washington put all his effort, put all his best to see that the 13 colonies were liberated from the British. He gave all his life in this war, and because of his military ability, because of his patriotism, he fought the war exhaustively. He was never exhausted in fighting the war. He was never tired, and due to his capability of fighting, the 13 colonies saw themselves victorious over the British. The next reason, we talk about the American soldiers had superior weapons or rifles. The American soldiers were using the Pennsylvania rifle, which was a far more better weapon as compared to the British musket. That was a very short-range military weapon as compared to the Pennsylvania rifle that was used by the 13 colonies. So, with this, since the 13 colonies had a superior rifle more than the British, they were able to fight and defeat the 13 colonies. Still under this, we could talk about the British soldiers. They called the red coats because their uniform was red. The red coat or the British soldiers, they had a uniform which was red, and this uniform was a weakness or a setback on the side of the British soldiers in the course of fighting the war. Because when the British soldiers go and hide themselves in the forest, because this war was fought mostly through guerrilla warfare or guerrilla tactics, which the British soldiers were not even used to this guerrilla warfare in America, which because the landscape of America only permitted that the war could be fought through guerrilla warfare. Now, when the British go and hide themselves, since they were wearing a uniform known as the red coat, because their uniform was red, they will be easily identified by the 13 colonies because of their uniform, and when they identify them, they will easily kill them. Again, we talk about the distance between Britain and the colonies was another setback, was another obstacle to the British in fighting the war, which was also an advantage to the 13 colonies. From Britain to the 13 colonies, it was 3,000 miles, and this long distance make it very difficult for bullets or ammunition and other war supplies to leave Britain and go to America. It could take a voyage of 6 weeks before this gold reached the 13 colonies from Britain. And this lengthy period of time for this voyage to leave Britain and reach the 13 colonies, it was a problem because when the British had a shortage in military or ammunition, they will only have to wait for the good or the military to arrive, which will take about 6 weeks. The distance again, it made the British not to be acquainted with the American land. They were not used to the topography because of distance that separated them far from the 13 colonies, thereby working on the disadvantage of the 13 British, on the disadvantage of the British colony and on the advantage of the 13 colonies. We talk again, another point was the vastness of America, which was another reason why the 13 colonies emerged victorious. America, or the 13 colony, was very vast, was very large, and since it was a vast land, the war was not only fought in the principal cities, but it extended to the nooks and crannies, where the British soldiers would penetrate into the nooks and crannies of America. And in the course of moving, since the American soldiers were very good in guerrilla warfare, they would hid themselves or hide themselves in the bushes, and when the British soldiers discover as they are penetrating into the interior of the 13 colonies, they will be gradually dying one after the other, because the 13 colony soldiers were taking them into the bushes and killing them. So the vastness of America contributed to the defeat of the British, since the British soldiers could not only continue fighting the war in the principal cities, but they have to move into the interior, and moving into the interior, it was a disadvantage on them because of the system of fighting that was used by the 13 colonies, which was the guerrilla warfare system. Again, we talk about disunity among the British soldiers. The British soldiers, in course of fighting the war, were not united. These soldiers, they were having setbacks among themselves because they were only infighting among the British generals, quarreling over who to control, who to dominate, who to control finances. And this disunity among them, it was a disadvantage because as they were not united under different generals, they were disunited. And the American soldiers were united under the leadership of George Washington. They could easily suppress the the British soldiers, or the British soldiers that were not united, because different generals were controlling the various soldiers, giving various instructions at different times, which was a disadvantage to them. Again, we talk about opposition of the war in Britain. The British again failed the war because they were oppositions against the war in Britain, especially the wings. The wings in the British Parliament were against the American or the British colonization of the 13 colonies. They did not want the British to colonize the 13 colonies. The wings were just looking for any opportunity that they would take and oppose the government of the kings, that they refer to it as the government of the kings and its friend. Since the wings were in the opposition, they were looking for means to criticize it. And because of that, the wings, we have people in the wings like Edmund Brown, Edda Pitt, and Thomas Paine. They were all against the British colonization of the 13 colonies. Their opposition to the war or to British colonization was a setback. It easily facilitated the defeat of the British, because even at home, the British were not united, since the wings were against the British colonization of the 13 colonies. Therefore, the 13 colonies had to take advantage of that and become united and became victorious against the British. Again, we talk about the use of foreign soldiers. The British again were defeated because they have hired Hessians. Hessians were soldiers that came from the German island of Hesse. These Hessians were hired by King George III and sent to go and fight the war in America against the 13 colonies. But the Hessians were not patriotic because they felt that they were fighting for money, and they were not fighting to defend their own homeland, but rather a strange land. And because of this, they never had the zeal. They were not fighting the war with zeal or passion to defeat the 13 colonies and continue domination. Since they were hired from a different country, they were fighting with a little bit of laxity. Because of that, the soldiers in the 13 colonies took advantage, since they were zealous, since they were anxious to liberate their homeland. They have to fight and defeat the Hessians, and the British were defeated. Lastly, we talk about the support of other European countries. Again, the British were defeated because the British were not favored by some European countries, like especially France and Spain. Don't forget that France and Spain were the countries where the British defeated them during the 7 Years' War to send them out of North America. So during the American War of Independence, France and Spain have to carry back the revenge to give support to the 13 colonies. They even gave them 120 warships to use it and fight against the British that were good in the sea. So with this support that came from these European countries, especially France and Spain, to the 13 colonies against the British, it led to the defeat of the British. These are the reasons why the 13 colonies were victorious or emerged victorious in the American War of Independence. Thank you so much for watching Benjamin Academy on American War of Independence. I remain your humble sir, Enchelon.